You have lived through the stories of the great tech pioneers, believing that computing power is a gift that only gets cheaper and more accessible with time. But as you refresh the page and see the latest prices for memory, the air seems to leave the room. The cost of a simple upgrade now rivals the price of a high-end graphics card from just a few years ago. This is not just a personal disappointment for a young, it is the first visible crack in a grand illusion. We have been told for decades that technology is the great equalizer, but the reality is shifting beneath our feet. This shock you feel is not a one-off event or a temporary market fluctuation. It is the beginning of a much larger, more systemic problem that is pricing normal people out of the digital future. Before we dive deep into the silicon heart of this crisis, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and join our community. Your support allows us to pull back the curtain on the forces shaping our world, and we are grateful to have you with us. The memory inside your computer is something you likely never thought about until it started costing as much as a month's rent. To understand why your digital life is becoming more expensive, you must first understand the two invisible pillars holding modern computing together. The first is DRAM, which acts as the brain's short-term working space, allowing your processor to access data in an instant. Without enough DRAM, even the fastest chip in the world becomes a stuttering, useless piece of silicon. The second pillar is NAND, the long-term memory that lives inside your solid-state drives and every storage chip you own. Think of DRAM as your active thoughts and NAND as your permanent library. In the world of 2025, every single device, from the phone in your pocket to the car in your driveway, needs both to function. When the demand for either of these components spikes, the entire global ecosystem feels a collective tremor. Memory is not a luxury or an optional add-on for enthusiasts. It is the very oxygen that allows our digital society to breathe. When oxygen becomes scarce, those with the deepest pockets are the only ones who can afford to keep inhaling. We are currently witnessing a vertical climb in prices that defies the traditional logic of technology. In the past, we expected hardware to follow a downward curve, becoming more powerful and more affordable as manufacturing improved. But the narrative has flipped, and the math has become brutal for the average consumer. DDR5 memory kits have seen their prices triple in an incredibly short span of time, while solid-state drives are climbing just as fast. Even the humble hard disk drive, once the cheapest way to store data, is beginning to creep upward in cost. This is not the slow, predictable burn of standard inflation that we see in groceries or fuel. This is a real-time supply shock that is happening so quickly, it is pricing normal people out of the market faster than their wages can ever hope to catch up. The dream of the affordable home workstation or the budget-friendly gaming rig is evaporating before our eyes. We are moving into an era where high-performance computing is no longer a tool for the masses, but a gated community for the elite. If you are looking for a villain in this story, you will find it in the sprawling, windowless monoliths known as AI data centers. These are not merely server rooms, they are planetary-scale computers that consume memory by the truckload. A single AI training cluster can require millions of PCs worth of high-bandwidth memory and NAND storage to function. In the eyes of the silicon manufacturers, your need for 16 gigabytes of RAM is nothing more than background noise compared to the hunger of a trillion-parameter model. These data center beasts are essentially black holes for supply, sucking in every available chip to power the next generation of artificial intelligence. When a single corporation can order 100,000 specialized chips at once, the individual consumer becomes invisible. We are no longer the target audience for the world's most advanced hardware, we are simply the leftovers. The feeding frenzy in Silicon Valley has reached a point where the future is being pre-ordered and locked away behind closed doors. Tech giants like OpenAI, Microsoft, and Google are not walking into stores to buy parts. They are signing multi-year contracts that reserve global supply for themselves. This is scarcity by design, a calculated move to ensure that the giants have the resources they need to win the AI arms race. By locking in these contracts, they effectively push the average consumer to the back of a line that never ends. The result is a market, where the prices you see on the shelf are inflated because the actual supply has already been promised to someone else. It is a world where the infrastructure of the future is being privatized before it even leaves the factory floor. You are not competing with other gamers or students for these parts. You are competing with the wealthiest entities in human history. Memory producers have looked at the balance sheets and they have made a definitive choice to pick sides. They have realized that producing server-grade, optimized memory is far more profitable and predictable than catering to everyday users. Building a new semiconductor fabrication plant, or a fab, costs tens of billions of dollars and takes years to complete. It is a risky, slow process that could lead to a price crash if supply eventually exceeds demand. To avoid this risk, companies are quietly pivoting their existing assembly lines away from consumer parts and toward the high-margin world of data centers. The market is not breaking, it is simply realigning itself to favor the most profitable customers. In this new alignment, the everyday user is the loser, left to fight over the scraps of an industry that no longer sees them as a priority. The rising cost of memory does not stop at the door of the DIY PC enthusiast. It spreads like a virus through every segment of the tech industry. Laptop makers, console manufacturers, and phone companies are all facing the same skyrocketing component costs. Because they cannot absorb these costs indefinitely, they pass them directly downstream to you, the consumer. This manifests in many ways, such as devices that are more expensive at launch or base models that come with embarrassingly low specifications. We are seeing a trend where the entry-level price for a functional computer is rising for the first time in decades. Furthermore, to save on costs, manufacturers are removing the very paths that allowed us to keep our devices for longer. The era of the $500 powerhouse is dying, replaced by a landscape of expensive, lockdown hardware. To adapt to this new reality, manufacturers have begun to lock their machines down, ushering in the era of the soldered future. By soldering RAM and storage directly to the motherboard, they eliminate the possibility of future upgrades. The device you buy on day one is the device you are stuck with until the day it dies. This is often marketed as a way to make devices thinner or more efficient, but the functional result is a shift in power. When you cannot upgrade your own hardware, you are forced to rely on cloud services for extra storage or processing power. Innovation is being rebranded as a way to move computation away from your desk and back to the corporations that own the data centers. You are no longer purchasing a tool that you own and control. You are purchasing a terminal that connects you to a service you must rent forever. As this crisis deepens, it stops being an abstract economic theory and begins to have a real impact on who gets left behind. The digital divide is widening into a canyon that separates those with access to capital from those without. Creators are finding that they have to wait longer for renders. Students are struggling to run the software they need for their degrees, and aspiring developers are dropping out because they cannot afford the hardware to learn. Schools and public institutions are being forced to compromise on the quality of the tools they provide to the next generation. Computing power is becoming stratified, creating a class system where the wealthy have access to infinite memory and everyone else is rationed on performance. This is a quiet tragedy that limits the potential of millions of people who have the talent but lack the budget. This matters because it is about more than just high frame rates in a video game or faster loading times. It is about who gets to compute, who gets to create, and who gets to experiment with the technologies of tomorrow. When the basic building blocks of hardware become prohibitively expensive, the path to innovation narrows significantly. We are at risk of losing the next great breakthrough because the person who would have discovered it couldn't afford a computer with enough RAM to run the simulation. Access to technology has been the primary driver of progress for the last 50 years. And as that access is restricted, the pace of human advancement may slow. We are trading the collective genius of the many for the concentrated power of the few. It is a trade that will have consequences for generations to come. Despite the weight of this reality, there are things we can still do to resist this trend and reclaim our digital agency. We must begin by questioning where our government chip subsidies are actually going and demanding that they benefit the public, not just corporate margins. We need to demand transparency on how much supply is being hoarded by tech giants and how it affects the global market. Supporting manufacturers who prioritize repairable and upgradable devices is a powerful way to vote with your wallet. We must push our institutions to invest in consumer-friendly hardware and open-source alternatives that don't require a connection to a central server. None of these actions will fix the memory crisis overnight, but staying silent guarantees that nothing will ever change. The power to shape the future of technology still rests, in part, with the people who use it. The memory crisis we are witnessing today is not just a fluctuating line on a price chart, it is a quiet warning of a possible future. It is a preview of a world where computing power lives entirely in data centers you will never see, owned by companies you can never compete with. In this future, you are a dependent user of systems that are designed to extract value from you rather than empower you. As we look ahead to 2025 and beyond, we must ask ourselves what kind of digital world we want to inhabit. Do we want a world where your ability to innovate is determined by your bank account? Or do we want a world where the most powerful tools ever created remain within reach of every curious mind? My advice to you is to cherish the hardware you have, learn to maintain it, and support the movements that fight for your right to own your technology. Take a moment to consider how much of your life is currently dependent on hardware you do not truly control. What would happen if the cost of your digital existence doubled tomorrow? These are the questions that will define the next decade of our lives. Thank you for spending this time with us to explore the complexities of the silicon world. I wish you and your loved ones great health and the resilience to navigate the changes ahead. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe we can still save the dream of affordable personal computing, or is the era of the individual user truly coming to an end? Your voice is a vital part of this conversation, and we look forward to hearing from you. Stay informed, and remember that the most important memory is the kind that helps us learn from the past to build a better future.